Today, we are diving deep into a text that explores one of the most fascinating and, let's be honest, provocative subjects out there: dark manipulation. We've all seen it in movies, but this source claims to pull back the curtain on the real thing, and it's a lot darker than you might imagine.
Think about it. You know those villains or anti-heroes that just stick in your head? According to this source, the thing that makes them so unforgettable, so magnetic, isn't their power or their looks. Nope, it's their chilling, absolute mastery of manipulation.
And this fascination, it kicks off a pretty familiar cycle. You get hooked on a character, and the next thing you know, you're deep in a social media rabbit hole, searching for things like dark psychology videos, trying to figure out their secrets. You want to know where that power comes from.
But here's the thing, the source points out, it never really works, does it? After hours of watching, you don't magically become a master manipulator. You just end up feeling like maybe you're not cut out for it. But this text argues the problem isn't you, it's the information you're getting. So why is this kind of knowledge so hard to come by? Well, the source has a pretty bold answer for that. It all comes down to the hidden limits of social media itself.
Here's the core claim. The kind of manipulation that these characters use is so psychologically dark, so intense, that public platforms just won't go there. They can't. There are lines that simply will not be crossed.
And this is where the source draws a massive line in the sand. What you see online are just tricks, body language hacks, simple tips, surface-level stuff. But what this source is talking about, it's a complete psychological overhaul. It's about, and I'm quoting here, murdering your kindness and accepting pure wickedness. It's not a skill you learn. It's about changing the very core of who you are.
So, the source's definition of manipulation is brutally simple. It's all about controlling other people for your own benefit. This isn't about being persuasive. It's about using dark psychological tactics that are built on a foundation of lies. Because as the text says, truth doesn't give you control. This all leads to a really chilling question. If real power isn't about learning a few tricks, then what is it about? According to this source, it's about making a huge sacrifice. This is the real price of power. And the source doesn't pull any punches here. The claim is that to become a true master of manipulation, you have to sacrifice the very things that make you human. It's a straight-up trade, your humanity in exchange for your desires. And we're not talking about some abstract idea. The source gets very specific. It says you have to literally get rid of your emotions, your compassion, and your conscience. These are seen as the weaknesses that are holding you back. The source actually calls this the first law of dark psychology, and it's basically a three-step process. First, you have to actively destroy your own kindness. Second, you have to fully accept your capacity for wickedness. And third, you have to start seeing other people not as human beings, but as tools, just objects to be used to get what you want. Okay, so why on earth would anyone choose to go down this path? Well, the source argues that in the real world, this kind of ruthless mindset is just flat out more effective. It presents life as an unfair fight, where being kind is actually a handicap.
And to really drive this point home, the source puts you in a scenario. Just imagine for a second, someone has found your deepest, darkest secrets, and they're blackmailing you. Your entire life is on the line. What's your move?
So the source lays out two paths. The kind-hearted person is eaten up by fear and guilt. They beg, they do whatever the blackmailer says, and they lose everything. But the monster, they don't feel guilt. They see a problem that needs to be eliminated, and they will do whatever it takes to destroy that person. The source then asks a pretty brutal question. Who survives that situation?
This quote from the source just comes right out and attacks that story we all love to believe. The whole idea that the good guy always wins in the end, the source calls that a myth. Just a nice story we tell ourselves that has nothing to do with reality. So what's the evidence for this incredibly grim worldview? The source points right to history. It argues that real power isn't built on being nice. It claims the most powerful people in history didn't succeed despite their dark side. They succeeded because of it. And that leads us to the final, and maybe the most disturbing, part of the entire argument, the source's theory about where all this wickedness actually comes from. It's all about unleashing the villain you already have inside. So, the next logical question is pretty obvious, right? If this is the key to power, then how do you get it? How do you actually make that transformation and become evil? The source's answer is the final twist in the knife. You don't learn it. You can't. This darkness isn't something you go out and get. It's an inherent part of being human. It's already sleeping inside every single one of us.
So who are the people who actually let this darkness out? According to the text, it's the ones who are completely self-absorbed, the ones who break rules without a second thought, and the ones who will win no matter what the cost. It's not about being special. It's just about having the guts to unleash what's already there.
Which leaves us with this one last, really provocative question from the source material. If real power comes from embracing this inner darkness, does that mean that history itself has been shaped and written by the wicked? It's a heavy thought to end on, and it perfectly sums up the unsettling worldview this text lays out. Do you agree?